Hello, everyone, and welcome. Please allow me to introduce you to our next speaker, Adam Stone. Adam is returning to the Coalesce stage this year, and today he will be talking to us about analytics engineering in the context of experimentation. Please join us in the Slack in the channel Coalesce What Does Analytics?
Excellent. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Jillian. I am absolutely thrilled to be here again this year with all of you. Please do join the Slack discussion. Brianna, my friend, will be dropping some links throughout my presentation, so check that out. I am Adam Stone. My pronouns are he, him, and I am a senior analytics engineer at Netlify. I've been there for about a year and a half, working closely with the growth and marketing teams. And part of that work is building a culture of experimentation, which includes, of course, running some experiments and working with some other great folks there. And I'm really excited to share my experience with you today. First, a quick note about Netlify. Netlify is a platform that developers love for building highly performative and dynamic websites, e-commerce stores, and apps based on the Jamstack ecosystem. So if you're looking to spin up a quick website, check us out. So I've got two huge takeaways. If you remember nothing else, please remember these two things. The first one is you can use product, create impact by driving product experimentation, which is great for your employer and the company's bottom line. But of course, I care more about you, my data people. So that leads me to my second point. Driving experimentation is a great way to level up your skills and your influence, which is great for you. So I've got 5 sections in my presentation today. The first one is motivation. I'd like to discuss why it is that I want to talk about experimentation with you all today. So let's zoom out a bit. What is the purpose of a data team? Of course, if you ask people, you'll get the common answer of, to help the business make better decisions, which is a good answer. But I think that another way of looking at it is to figure out what are the jobs to be done, or specifically, what does the business need from the data team? Emily Shario wrote a great blog post a few months ago where she applied that jobs to be done framework to data teams. She came up with 5 various jobs to be done and how the data team can drive impact. Those 5 jobs to be done are data activation, metrics management, proactive insight discovery, driving experimentation, and interfacing with the data, which is like, help desk work, pulling numbers to hand off. Now, all of those jobs were not created equally. And I think that in the past 6 years since DBT was first invented and we all came together as analytics engineers, some of those jobs have gotten more discussion, more support, more resources, more guidance and attention than other jobs, which is fine. There are just some jobs that are more clear, more low-hanging fruit than other jobs. So what I did was to take those 5 jobs to be done and put them into a metric, like a spectrum of decipherability, if you will. So the jobs at the bottom are the jobs that are more clear than the jobs at the top. And we're going to go from the bottom up on this slide. So we start with interfacing with the data, which is just pulling numbers, writing some SQL, you know it, you do it. Second is metrics management, which is really our bread and butter as analytics engineers. Oftentimes, the goal of many kind of early analytics engineering projects is to define metrics and to manage those metrics. And there are some blog posts on this topic and some resources out there for this particular function. Now, as we get closer to the middle of our spectrum, we get data activation, which I think has moved down a lot in the past year or so. It's become more clear. We've got more apps and tools for this. And so it's become clearer and clearer how to do it and how to do it well. As we move up, the next one is proactive insight discovery. And the reason why I put this closer to the middle is because even though as it is our bread and butter, but there are very few repeatable processes in this, and it's very context specific. You'll do it differently each time and differently at each company. So it's not as clear that we're doing it well. And then we get to the top, which is driving experimentation. And this one is really, in the, how do we do this? And engineering is a large part of this, a large component of it. It's all wrapped up in the term data science or decision science and associated with machine learning. And we kind of imagine that it's very smart people wearing lab coats doing this work. Why is it this way? Why does experimentation feel so opaque? There are a few reasons. Currently, it's a less obvious fit with our modern data system. We wonder, which tools do we use to do this? It's just not that obvious right now, but that is changing. There are more and more tools and apps out in the marketplace for doing this. The second reason is that people feel that they need very specialized skills for this particular work. Like it's only for people who call themselves a data scientist. But this work involves a lot of statistics and probability. And there's not a lot of education for that out in the world, or rather, there's not a lot of good education about it. Also, product engineering typically doesn't have this background. So that makes it all a little bit more kind of daunting. And related to that topic, when it's less clear, where do we even go for experimentation? Are there blogs about, building tables? Yes, but then how do you analyze the experiment? How do we do that? We're just not sure. And the last one is oftentimes when you do hear about experiments, it's always related to, say, Uber or Airbnb or Stitch Fix or Netflix. And so we have this idea that only big companies do this, but perhaps my little startup that's only 150 people can't really even run experiments. So that means that we don't even have leadership asking us to run experiments. But it doesn't have to be this way, which is my motivation for talking to you about this. So why are we even caring about running experimentation in the first place? Why is it impactful? After I talk about this, I will talk about why it is that I feel that analytics engineers are the perfect fit for this. So let's talk first about what is an experiment. Of course, there are different terms out there like A/B testing or randomized control trials or multivariate tests. They're all talking about the same basic idea. You have a group of users, you randomly split them in half. One group sees one thing, another group sees something that is slightly different. And then you measure the metrics for each group, and hopefully there's a significant difference. for your experiment. One big reason that we run experiments is because we suck at figuring out the value of our ideas. These quotes are actual quotes from product managers or program managers from big companies and how often they get it wrong. How often the spaghetti that's thrown to the wall just doesn't stick. And think about it. Google and Netflix, we think that they know everything about us, right? But they are still getting it wrong 80% of the time when they try to figure out what it is that their user base wants. With so much uncertainty out there, how can you feel confident that the feature that you're working on won't hurt your user's experience? How do you trust that it will have, the high impact that you're hoping for? But of course, if you measure the value of that idea instead of just guessing, then experiments help you do that. Experiments also protect us against our silly human biases. You've heard this quote a million times, I'm sure. Oh, this new feature, oh, it's definitely going to increase our growth. Or, remember though, 80% of what Google tries doesn't work. Or we hear, oh, this new thing will definitely double our revenue. It's going to have a huge impact. But then oftentimes the reality is you're lucky to get 1 or 2% increase off of that. Or what often happens is that if something doesn't work, then we look back and we say, oh, no, really, that feature did work, but the economy at that time. Or, we say, oh, marketing just didn't put out the right messaging surrounding that feature. Experimentation cuts through all of those biases and shines a cold, harsh light on the numbers and shows us what actually happened. Another reason to run experiments is to defend against those annoying metrics questions. We've all been there when a stakeholder, slides into your DMs and is like, "Hey, I see that line went down. That happened around the same time that we changed the button color for upgrading. Um, Obviously, that decline is because of that button color change, right?" And of course, it's impossible to answer that because we just don't know. I mean, it changed for everyone at the same time, and it could have been any number of things that were also happening out in the world at the same time. But if you run it as an experiment first, now you've got a good story to tell to your stakeholders. You can say, yes, our experiment showed that that caused a conversion change or that it didn't. Experiments help us measure the value of our ideas. It gives your company confidence to make decisions that will drive user growth, retention, and monetization. When you run experiments, it's not about whether or not your hypothesis was right or wrong. It's about what you're learning about your users and new insights that you get that you didn't know before. Oftentimes, those insights are counterintuitive and priceless, and they give you a competitive advantage in the marketplace. They also empower your engineers. The engineers will be more motivated to work on things if they know that there's already value shown, and they are more likely to enjoy that work because the value is there. And when you build out experiments, the engineers start to feel motivated to run their own experiments because they're already close to the code, they work close with the product, and they've got a lot of ideas for what will work and what won't. And if they're able to collect data and show the product lead to say, look, this is a good idea and it works, that's really empowering. It also excites your team. Your team will become excited to try new things. There's always some drama in running experiments, finding out whether or not you were right or wrong. That's exciting to do just generally, and it's exciting to bring to your company as well. So now let's talk about you, my dear analytics engineers. Why are you perfectly positioned to take control of experimentation in your workplace? I'm sure that you all know the scientific method. You come up with a hypothesis, you do a plan, you collect your data, you write a conclusion. When we are running experiments, we are going through the same process. And I've noticed that data is a core step for every process involved in running experiments. It plays a role in experimentation that is unlike any other function like product or engineering. And I think that this is where the skills that analytics engineers have really shines. Experimentation is fundamentally about measurement, and data is who owns measurement. I know that this slide has a lot of text. I'm not even going to give you time to read through this. I'm going to give you the TLDR on it. The left column are the steps that typically are involved in running an experiment. The middle column is all of the data work that is involved in those steps. It is an incredible amount of work. And so much of it has to be done in close collaboration with product, design, and engineering. But what's exciting about this is that there are so many different types of work to be done. Every skill that you have as an analytics engineer will come to bear on this particular work. You're having conversations, you're writing up information, you are handholding, you're writing SQL, you're testing, you're doing review and analytics, and helping people make decisions. So you as an analytics engineer have the full end-to-end 360 perspective on the data and how it moves through different systems. Remember, experimentation has so many steps that you have to be able to look at the data throughout the lifetime of the experiment. Analytics engineers are really good at thinking about what it is that we need at the end or what the business needs, and then working backwards to get to that point. We make sure that all of the data that we need for our intended outcome is there. So we know how to come up with a hypothesis and answer whether or not it was supported and why. Then we go back to making sure that all of the data tracking, all of our metrics, all of our sources, resources, etc., are all in the same place. And we do this because we really know that there is only one shot to get it right. We've got to collect the data we need by the end of it, or we have to start all over at square one. And if we don't, then we might not have enough data to explain it. And we own the data infrastructure. So we know if things are broken and we can go in and fix it, or we can prevent decisions from being made off of bad data. Also, we're really good at talking with stakeholders and figuring out what the business needs in order to translate this into the technical aspects. We typically work closely in collaboration with PMs during experiments, and both PMs and us are really invested in making sure that we get the data right. So for all of those reasons, analytics engineers are the perfectly positioned people to either join or lead experimentation. You already know all about this. So hopefully now you're convinced that analytics engineers are the perfect people to run experiments. But how do you get started? I've found that it takes a lot of mentoring and a lot of cheerleading. So how do you get started? Talk about it. Just start talking about it and running experiments. Don't worry about getting the right answer on your first, second, or even third try. I know that this probably feels like, you remember that meme where it's drawing an owl and the first step is to draw a circle and the second step is to draw the rest of the effing owl? I don't mean to come off that way, so let me do a little bit of a deeper dive on this. The reason why it's a good strategy to just start talking about it is because we have the flywheel here related to experimentation, and people need to start becoming interested in experimentation. People need to start going, oh, wow, there's real potential there, real possibilities for the results. And when you start discussing that, you start to have these systems in place for running experiments. The more experiments that you run, the more people will look at it, and it becomes that virtuous flywheel. Remember, experimentation involves a lot of drama, and lean into that drama. But first, focus on yourself and educating yourself. If your manager has not yet told you this, let me be the first to say it. Professional development is part of your job. You are actually paid to do it. And this book, Trustworthy Online Controlled Experiments, is one that I cannot recommend strongly enough. It's amazing. I actually used the first 4 chapters for a book club at my work, and it was great. So start off with that, get that book. But there are lots of resources out there. I want to highlight 2 resources, though. One is Davis Trebig's Experimentation Resources Repo. It's like a list of 50 different articles about experimentation, which is excellent. Bravo to him for collecting all of that information and putting it in one place. I also want to call out the very last point, which is talking to people about it. It's a great strategy because not only internal people that you're trying to get excited about experimentation, but also talk to external people about, how the hell do I even do this? And I want to recognize that this is a lot of solo and solitary work where you feel like, wow, I'm the only person in my workplace that cares about this. That is a real feeling. And I would like to recommend John Peebles' A Memo to the Lone Rangers of Experimentation. When you are feeling that way, have a look at that particular memo. Then identify your squad. This squad can be a team like growth, which is, it's typically growth, but also it could be marketing, product, machine learning. Find a VP or a director, someone at that level who maybe has already bought into your idea that experimentation is important. Could be someone who's from, say Uber or Airbnb. And they'll be excited about the value that experimentation brings to your workplace and support you in doing that. If you've got a product manager, make friends with them, be their BFF. They typically have the training and background that is a lot of heavy data work and experimentation, and they will be thrilled to find a partner to go on that experimentation journey with. I recommend book clubs. You can see the screenshot of the book club that I ran, which was amazing. And I also recommend geeking out with your engineers. Have some fun thinking about the possibilities and how to implement feature flags or randomization or SDK, and find an engineer that typically likes to talk about the topic and just have fun with it. And another reason to talk with the engineers is because it's always a lot of engineering work, like building experimentation platform. Again, Davis Trebill has another article, The Experimentation Gap. And in that article, it talks a lot about the technical requirements for building out experimentation. So that's really good stuff for your engineers to know about as well. And then the last step is to start small. Just start with small experimentation. Think about small things that can be done. You're going to make mistakes, but you're going to learn from those mistakes. And it's all about learning by doing. Like I said, it's also a lot about cheerleading. Celebrate your small wins. Every time you take a step forward, promote that. Call it out in Slack. Have some cheerleading and some excitement surrounding that. Those are actual quotes from my workplace. And invest in your write ups. And by that, I mean your write ups are how to build your brand as an experimentation team. And people will end up getting FOMO from reading your write ups. But also, they'll realize that there's so much learning, so much logic happening there, and learning that is very rigorous. You're not only defining what has happened with your hypothesis, but also explaining why it happened that way. And that's going to be about 75% of your write up. The why is going to be about 75% of your write up. And of course, that's great for your brand and your influence and your next performance review. The last part is about build versus buy. I'm going to touch on that very quickly. So, should you buy an app or should you build the analytics yourself? The good news is that you do not need a PhD in statistics to do this. The reason for this is that smart people with PhDs have already built it for you. The decision of which tools to use really depends on your product and your data architecture. I work with a modern data stack, so of course I prefer apps that integrate well with my modern data stack, that sit on top of the data warehouse. And that's because as analytics engineer, we spend a lot of time carefully explaining our or defining our metrics. And those are the same metrics that we want to test during experimentation. So why would we reinvent the wheel or recreate those metrics in another app that doesn't necessarily understand your data warehouse? You want to be able to pass along those definitions, your defined metrics, to those third-party apps such as Epo or Growthbook, or perhaps even do it yourself. Now, I want to add that there's a lot of value in just building your own user-applied models or various tables. You can develop confidence in, say, what Epo or Growthbook can do for your business if you've already had experience building those out yourself. Also, they offer feature flag and randomization solutions. So talk with your engineers if you need to do that. If your app or if your metrics are mostly based on the click stream or the event stream, then the solutions at the bottom might be a better fit for you. Those integrate with your click stream so you can run experimentation based on those things alone. So to wrap up, remember those two big takeaways that I mentioned at the beginning. You can create impact by driving experimentation, which is great for your company, great for your employer. But what's better for you is to be able to drive experimentation in order to level up your skills and your influence, which is great for your career as an analytics engineer. And finally, the last part is to remember to just start talking about experimentation. Kick off that flywheel and make sure that you are persistent in talking about it. Thank you all for paying attention today, and thank you for Mindy for interpreting. Oh goodness, now we have awkward silence. Well, I guess I will see you all on Slack, okay? Yeah?
Great. Yeah, Adam, thank you so much for sharing your experience navigating product experimentation. I look forward to seeing more analytics engineers get involved. And I heard you mention the need for cheerleading during your talk, and it got me thinking maybe we need an experimentation channel in the DBT Slack if there's interest. And Bree, thank you for
Absolutely. Yes, let's make that happen.
Yes. Okay, let's do it. And I was just giving a shout out to Bree. Thank you for representing this topic so well with your all-star chat championing today. Adam, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you. I love seeing you every year at Coalesce.
You too, always. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me again.